All right, chapter 1, lesson 4. This one is all about the properties of numbers. We're going to talk about 4 different properties. The first one is our commutative property. This one talks about the order. So if I started with 3 plus 2, what the commutative property tells me is that is the same as 2 plus 3. Same numbers, same signs, I just flipped the order. And to prove it, we know that 3 plus 2 is 5, and 2 plus 3 is also 5, so it does check out. We could also do the commutative property of multiplication. So same thing, if I did 5 times 8, that would be the same as 8 times 5, because 5 times 8 is 40, and 8 times 5 is 40, so that also checks out. So the commutative property talks about changing the order. Our associative property talks about grouping. So we're going to have to squeeze these in a little just to warn you. If I group 2 plus 3 plus 4, I could regroup that as 2 on the outside plus 3 plus 4 inside parentheses. And just to check this out, 2 plus 3 gives us 5 plus 4, which is 9. And then on the other side, 2 plus 3 plus 4 gives us 7. And 2 plus 7 still gives us 9. So commutative or associative property tells us we can regroup. So same thing for multiplication. I'll switch the color on you here so you can differentiate between them. If I group 2 times 3 times 4 would be the same thing as 2, and then inside 3 times 4, I'm writing the wrong numbers again. And to check it out, 2 times 3 is 6, times 4 gives us 24, and then 2 times 3 times 4 is 12, 2 times 12 is also 24. So the associative property of multiplication and addition. Then at the bottom we have our identities. Your additive identity. I want to think about identity means yourself. So what could I add to 6 in order for it to stay 6? Well, you would be adding a 0. So our additive identity means we add 0. Same thing for our multiplication identity, or multiplicative identity. What can I multiply by 8 in order to stay 8? Well, anything times 1 is itself. So multiplicative identity, we are multiplying by 1. Okay, so there's a couple properties for you. Now let's practice them. Name the property. Our first one, d plus 0 equals d. Well, I see I'm adding 0. So it is the additive identity. In the next one, we have 14 plus 9 plus 10 equals 14 plus 9 plus 10. I see parentheses. I see my parentheses are moving, but I also see 14, 9, 10, 14, 9, 10. So our order did not change. Our grouping changed. So that's an associative property. And then I always want to label this, whether it's addition or multiplication. So put a little plus sign at the end. It's the associative property of addition. And we look at 2b. We have 8 times 1 equals 8. Well, I see that times 1, that's my key there. That is the multiplicative identity. And last one here, we have 5 times 7 times 2, or 7 times 2 times 5. I see no parentheses, no grouping, so I know it's not associative. But if I notice, they're the same numbers, but they're in different order. Well, order dealt with commutative. And again, I need to label it with multiplication because it's the commutative property of multiplication. All right, rolling right along. throw a couple of multiple choice your way. Which property supports the fact that 12 times 1 equals 12? Well, I see that times 1 again. There's my key. So I know it's an identity. And it's multiplying. So we want the one with the multiplication symbol. Which property supports the fact that 11 plus A plus C equals A plus C plus 11? Again, I don't see any grouping symbol, so it can't be associative. I'm not adding 0, and I'm not multiplying by 1, so that was multiplying anyways. I'm left with commutative, rather. So then I have to choose addition or multiplication. Well, everything's addition, so it has to be B. Told you guys I make a couple mistakes when I make these videos. Okay, so now our last topic here, simplifying algebraic expressions. If I look at part A, I see 3 plus E inside my parentheses and then plus 7 on the outside. Well, I know that I can't do 3 plus E at this point because I don't know what that E is. But my commutative property tells me that first, I could switch these around to make it E plus 3 plus 7. And then my associative property tells me I can put my E on the outside and 3 plus 7 on the inside. Now I can do that. So E plus 10. Okay, in part B, same idea here. My commutative property tells me x times 5 is the same as 5 times x. And then my associative property tells me I can move my grouping to 8 times 5 times x. And I can now do 8 times 5, which is 40, times x, which is the same as 40x. Eventually, you're going to be seeing these problems and you'll be able to just do them without all these steps. But for now, since we're focusing on the properties, we want to show the properties that we're using. So part C, 9 plus 0 plus q. Well, in this case, I don't have to go through any of those steps because I see this plus 0, which tells me it's our additive identity, which means it's going to just be itself. So 9 plus q. And in part D, 4 times A times 0. This is actually new. It's not a property we went over, but that times 0. Anything times 0 is 0. We know that. So 4 times 0 gives us 0. And this is actually our 0 property of multiplication. So that's our 0 property. That one's new. Make sure you make a note of that. Now, if you wanted, as we're going through, go back and label all of the different properties. We might ask you to do that. But that is the end of the notes that we're doing together. So try a couple out on your own. I have 2 quick ones here for you. First, I want you to name the properties shown in each statement. So I have 4 plus 6 equals 6 plus 14. So go ahead and write this, and then write the property underneath it. And then simplify each expression. And then I'm going to add a little bit on here. Label the properties you're using. So I talked you through all the properties on the last slide. Now I want you to actually label them as you go. So 16 plus 22 plus C. Simplify that expression, labeling the properties that you're using. And go ahead and pause that to finish up those 2 problems, and then you're done with this lesson.